everybody. Welcome back. I'm your host, Charity Chaffee. I'm a teen mental health specialist, therapist in private practice, and you are listening to my podcast, which is all about teens, teen life, how we support them, interviewing providers, parents, teens themselves about their experiences in therapy and beyond. It is September, and as most people in the US know, September is the month for suicide awareness in the US. And so I wanted to take some time today to talk about suicide, mental health in teens, etc. So my practice is focused on working with high-risk teens, which means I work with pretty much all of my caseload at some point was like suicidal, self-harming, engaging in kind of like high-risk activities because they didn't really care about like self-preservation and what was happening in their life, and they just like wanted out. And I think that a lot of parents have a really hard time talking about suicide. A lot of providers have a really hard time talking about suicide because we're always afraid that if we name it and we say it, that they're going to do it, which is not the case. And actually naming it and talking about suicide and high risk, high harm situations can be helpful in normalizing it and validating it and helping kind of like start the conversation for where we need to go, where do we need to get to support them in navigating towards something that's just a little bit different, that's not them ending their life. So the first thing I want to say about teen suicide and teen like high risk behavior is that a lot of people will kind of push off mental health concerns, depression, anxiety, OCD, etc. because they're like, oh, is it really that bad? Is it really that bad that you need to go to a therapist, that you need to go to an IOP, that you need to go to like a partial, right? That you need like residential placement. And the interesting part to me with that is that when we say, is it really that bad? We're also sending the message that you don't get help and support unless you are at like literally rock bottom. And that can be a great time to get help if they haven't had help before, if it kind of came out of nowhere. But oftentimes, instead of trying to pick them up off the bottom, it's easier to try to catch them in the free fall or to help them on the way up than it is to just like meet them right at rock bottom where they haven't had any help, they haven't had any support, and they don't have maybe the skill set to navigate through it. School is in full swing at this point. It is definitely the fall. In the US, we started, last week, 2 weeks ago. And I just want to like point out that this is a really great time to get your kid into services. Even if there's no diagnosis, even if there's nothing that's kind of like inherently wrong, therapy doesn't just have to be about accessing services when something is wrong. Therapy can be about a supportive growth development process. It can be a helpful support when they're crafting their college essays or when they're trying to figure out what sort of internship they want to do or navigating like making new friends, right? Like there's all these really cool benefits to therapy that's not maybe just about a diagnosis. So, first thing. Second thing is that if you have a kid who's struggling and you have a kid who's like really just not doing well, you need to focus and prioritize their mental health. I can't like full stop. If they are no longer on this earth, it doesn't matter if they have to go to band camp. It doesn't matter if they have to do a play. It doesn't matter. None of those things matter if they're not here with us. And pushing mental health care off because they have this like big thing to do very much feels like a dismissive, oh, it's not that bad yet, you don't need help yet, where we could catch them in the free fall, which would be so much more helpful than scraping them up off the bottom and trying to like make it work from that point. Mental health is just as serious as physical health. In the same way that you would take someone to the doctor if they were like, I'm not feeling so hot, it's the same way we should get them into therapy. We should get them into places that are supportive of their long-term growth and development as teenagers. So that being said, suicide is one of the leading causes in death for kids ages, I think 12 to 20, 12 to 21 was the last time I checked. And we know that suicide often stems from mental health concerns, stems from being bullied. It stems from, obviously, there's an impulsive part of the developmental brain for adolescents that is like also present as part of that. And so the more we can talk about mental health and emotions and how we manage that, the more we can role model for them how to manage sadness and frustration and anger and things being unjust or unfair, the more that we can have conversations around how we deal with that, the more probable it is that they're going to be able to work through like really bad things. But they can't always do it by themselves. Which is why having a therapist, which is why having a strong like emotional connection to your kid is really important. It's why naming suicide, naming harm to self, naming these things that feel kind of like high risk and destructive as those things. We don't want to shy away from those things in therapy, because what it does do is it sends the message to a teenager or even to a parent, if you're a therapist, that the thing that you're experiencing, the intensity, the frustration, the whatever it is too much for your therapist. If we're not naming the narrative, we're not having those like really hard conversations about what's happening, we are sending the message that the things that you're experiencing are too big for us. They're too big. We don't care. We're not prompting it. We're not asking about it. And then if we're not asking those things, like, does that even matter if we're not helping to like lead the discussion? Everyone is scared to talk. So many people are scared to talk about suicide. But at the end of the day, talking about suicide and mental health could literally help save someone's life. Focusing on conversations surrounding all of the different things could help save someone's life. That being said, when we prioritize students' mental health, teens' mental health, we not only get further investment, further regulation, deeper understanding of themselves, more understanding and complexity of how to kind of navigate things as a parent, we get all of those things from that situation. I know that there are so many parents who are just trying to like hold on to normal, right? They're just trying to hold on to normal. They're trying to hold on to like, we'll just get through this thing and it'll be fine. And I'm here to tell you, sure, it could be fine, but it may not be fine. And at the end of the day, I'd rather your kid be alive and in treatment than dead because we dismissed it. Suicide is one of the leading causes of teen death in the US, likely worldwide. I'm not sure entirely what the numbers are. But if that's the case, why would we not treat that? Why would we not name that? Why would we not give them the help and support? And now if you've listened to me at all, you know that I'm a huge proponent of everyone could be in therapy. Therapy is a help and support for everything. You don't have to have a diagnosis in order to be in therapy. If we think about supportive, preventative care, like going to the dentist to get your teeth cleaned, going and seeing your pediatrician once a year, those are both preventative things. Why don't we do that more with therapy? Why does there have to be this like really strongly identified awful problem that you're going through in order for you to access someone to talk to? Like the messaging that we're sending our teens about mental health is backwards. Everyone should be in therapy. If you're a parent, you should be in therapy. If you're a therapist, you should also be in therapy. Really, everyone should be in therapy, because therapy is not just a place for treatment, but it's a place for self-development, growth, reflection, understanding our patterns, our neurological systems and how they're built, and attachment and how that is impacting everything. And really trying to like get us to the point where we can live the fullest, best life possible. Huge proponent of therapy. The piece that gets hard about this too is that there are a lot of therapists who could be incredible, could be super well supported, also could have like no supervision or lack the kind of skills to help support teens in crisis or teens when they get down to that point of like being really suicidal or really struggling. And I see a lot of people, especially in outpatient private practices, that once a teen is suicidal, they're no longer stable enough to be part of that practice. So that teen who finally comes to the conclusion that they are suicidal or gets brave enough to share that message is then penalized by saying, I'm suicidal, and the therapist being like, okay, great, I can't handle you in my private practice. You're too high risk. I'm not set up for this. Whatever the thing you want that to be, put that in there. And I think the thing is we're never guaranteed stability. Never. We're never guaranteed stability as a client. We're never guaranteed, well, as a client, yes. We're never guaranteed stability as a therapist, nor are we guaranteed stability as a parent of a teen. Teens thrive off of stability. They thrive off of routine. Those things are helpful for them because they are the child in the situation. They should have some predictability, some consistency and stability with it. But for therapists, we can't add a new client to our caseload and just like absolutely know that there's never going to be any sort of like suicidality, that there's never going to be any sort of self-harm, that even in the consultation call, they told us everything that we needed to know. There will absolutely be situations where you make a call and you're working with someone, you agree to work with them, and then stuff hits the fan, they're in crisis, bam, now you have suicidality. And I know that there are a lot of people that don't feel adequately trained in dealing with suicidality and how to support someone who is like maybe in the chaos of it all, maybe like self-harming, and if that is you as a therapist, I want you to know, A, you're not alone, and B, I want you to get as much help and support as you possibly can, because the people that you're working with that would want to stay with you during crisis are the people that still need you. So just like anything in therapy, like I want you to have a really big toolbox to deal with suicidality, suicide, self-harm, all of the things that I like talk about all the time because they are really important when you're working with teens particularly. So get the training, don't be afraid, find the places, close to you, online, etc. that offer stuff. I offer a monthly consultation group for therapists working with high-risk teens. I absolutely love having these conversations and helping to support people working their way through understanding and how to structure it. I will tell you too, I have a thriving private practice and I work with my high-risk teens and I have no problem seeing them in outpatient, even if they're like experiencing, suicidality, self-harm, etc. because I'm trained in those things. I have had years and years of experience in those things, and my confidence definitely comes from consultations I've received and that I've given from all the trainings that I've done, like you name it, I've worked for it. So teen suicide is a very, very serious issue. We know that it stems from mental health. We know that they need support. To me, getting them in therapy and making sure the therapist has like competency is of utmost importance. But I want to talk about like parenting a suicidal kid for a hot second, because I know that there are a lot of parents that really struggle with how to talk about suicide, with how to talk about depression, with how to kind of like manage the things your kids are feeling. And as a parent, your job is not to like always make life easier for them. Sure, there are situations you'd love to do their laundry because it makes it easier for them. You'd love to like cook them breakfast because it takes something off their plate. Those are fine. But we can't make everything easier for them in terms of mental health. We can't take it all away. We are meant to be guardrails. We're meant to be supports. We're meant to be a way that they can like help navigate that situation for them. So your kid experiencing depression and suicidality and self-harm and whatever else is going on, it's really hard to watch. And it often feels like there's nothing you can do to help them get out of that rut. But there are things you can do to help them get out of that rut and to get into a better space. One of those things is making sure they have a therapist that they feel really, truly connected with, that they feel like is actually helpful. It's okay to screen 2 or 3 different types of therapists. It's okay to have them meet with a few people to pick out the one that's going to be the best. That really is best practice. We want that teen to feel so connected to their therapist that they feel like they can talk about anything, including all these deeper things surrounding suicidality and self-harm. I think too, we want to talk to the pediatrician. We want to like understand, medication. We want to get a referral for a psychiatrist if we're at that point. Meds sure aren't going to fix everything, but meds can really help keep a kid afloat. I always say that meds are a life preserver. They're not meant to be the thing that they wear forever, but they can definitely help them swim while they're still learning how to swim with everything they're facing. Third thing is that we want to look at their supports at school, and we want to like understand how school is maybe helping them give some stay on task and like give them something to do. And we want to understand the ways in which school has been maybe divisive and not supportive and stressful. If there are things that we can tweak at school, we should ask for those things as parents, as advocates. We want to get in touch with a school counselor. You want to get in touch with anyone at school that could be like a helpful support for your kid, because at the end of the day, this is about suicide is a life-ending thing, and we want to make sure that we can preserve life. So sometimes when we are working on preserving life, we are pulling back from the things that aren't like a requirement or aren't like a necessity, right? And I know that there are so many parents, they put their kids' mental health on hold because they're doing different activities. And I'm here to tell you that it does not matter if your kid attends ballet 5 days a week if they end up dead. It doesn't matter if they, get straight A's and have a 4.0 at the end of the year if they end up in suicide. I hate to say it, but that is the truth. So all the things that you're prioritizing, right? Your kids' theater, your kids' sports, your kids' grades, you're prioritizing the wrong thing, and it should be prioritizing mental health. Once mental health is treated, then they can go back and they can do whatever they wanted to do. They can re-enroll in theater, they can get back into dance, they can do the wrestling, whatever those things are. But they're not going to be able to do any of those things if they're dead, because their mental health was never treated, or it was dismissed because there, quote unquote, wasn't enough time. I want you to think about it in terms of longevity. We know that mental health outcomes can be shorter and fiercer if they're treated earlier and more quickly. Think about it as like a bad infection. If you treat the infection sooner and you get it under control, then you can go back and you can live your daily life because your infection is under control, you are good to go. If you let that infection fester and fester and fester and fester, it's going to end up impacting every single system in your body. And depression and anxiety and suicidality and sadness are the same. So by putting off treatment, you are also effectively putting off your child from experiencing or engaging in things once they are actually happy and healed and healthy. So I can't urge you enough, when you start to see that there are issues and concerns with mental health, to redirect your attention and make sure they have what they need in those areas, that you are not just dismissing it, that you are like acknowledging that it's happening, that you are offering things that would be helpful, like therapy and meds, mental health days, right? I'm just going to go on a side tangent of mental health days. Every school has the, a certain amount of sick days where kids can be out. If you are a parent and you're working, obviously you also have the ability to stay out of work for a day or two if you come down with something. The thing that we don't talk often enough about, and I think this is part of what kind of like Teens Uncharted has become, is really speaking out about how we are subconsciously role modeling mental health and our own ability to like soothe ourselves and get us what we need. So for instance, as an employed adult, you have the ability to take sick days. As a child in school, you have the ability to take sick days. Now, for some reason, what happens is that parents will say, well, you're not really sick, so you have to go to school. Even if a kid has said, I'm really struggling, it's a really bad day, I can't, I'm super depressed, all these things are coming up, the parent still is like, no, but you're not actually sick, so you have to go. You have to have the mental toughness to go, right? And in that moment, what you are telling that kid is not that they have to have mental toughness. It's that their feelings and their emotions and their emotional state and their personal well-being does not matter more than the goal of getting them to school consistently and being on time. Like that's what you're saying. So if we turn that on its head and we say, hey, Sally, it does actually matter how you feel. And let's talk about a mental health day if you're feeling right, if you're feeling bad, if you're like not having a good day. And I have this whole worksheet that I work through kids with. They send it to parents too, around like mental health days. It's a structured outline that I give to people because I want them to be able to think about how they use their sick days, how they use their bad days from school, from work, whatever, and that they can process through how do they make a decision. So for instance, one of the questions on my questionnaire for a mental health day is like, do you have anything due today, tomorrow that is like upcoming that would be impacted by taking a mental health day? And sometimes I also have kids write down how many days they've missed that month or that year, depending on what kind of a person they are, and how many days for the school or how many days are on their IEP that they can reasonably miss. And then I also want them to have the information on like medical leaves and stuff like that. So like, does a letter from their doctor count as an excused absence if they get one? So again, we're information sourcing and we're making sure they are as informed as possible. And then we're also helping them understand the process of how do we decide to when and how to take a mental health day? What sorts of things would go into that would be important for us to know? And now this is a conversation that I would always want to have with people at the beginning of the school year around what your expectations are as a parent. I have some families that will say you get one mental health day a month. I have some that are just kind of like, we'll deal with it when they come up. But the important thing is you have a kid who knows they're being supported in their mental health. They can then come to you and say, hey, I'm having a really hard time. I think I need a mental health day. And then you're opening a discussion around that, which then ultimately just makes sure that they have support, not just of a therapist, but also of a family member, of a guardian, etc. I am a strong proponent of mental health days. I'm a strong proponent of teen and adolescent health and wellness. I'm a strong proponent of talking about suicide and naming the things and having those discussions, and also talking about like what suicide truly is to teens, because I think that there are some teens that don't have a full understanding of what that actually means in terms of like, if you do kill yourself, right? If you attempt that and you do try that and you don't come back, because that's what that means, right? Suicide is like, you're dead, you're gone, you are not coming back. The next thing is that you attempt suicide and you end up in a disastrous situation and someone does find you and your body's only half dead, or you end up like paralyzed, or, like some sort of horrible, ramifications. And then the other one is kind of these like discussions about like wanting to kill yourself via means that aren't necessarily lethal, like self-injury, for instance. But I think a lot of people get really scared about like having those conversations and talking about it. But I do want kids to understand the differences between kind of all of those pieces. And I want them to also know that mental health is being taken very seriously, because you're having those conversations, you're getting them into therapy, you're doing the things you need to do, and I think that there's a lot of different treatment modalities that can be useful with suicidality, and I can pin them in the group. There's lots of people that are talking about it that are really wonderful in their own regard, and they work with it from different levels. I use a harm reduction approach and a lot of like motivational interviewing, person-centered treatment. I'm also trained in a lot of trauma work, and I think all of those kind of like tie together and make just like a really great model of how to support teens in a really like effective and genuine and supportive way. Of course, there are also providers who are out there that do like DBT with teens, the high-risk teens, and do a lot of really great work with that. I don't think there's one modality that's like the best of everything, because I think it really depends on the kid, but there are definitely therapists out there that like know what they're doing with adolescent suicide and with talking about teens and staying safe and really like making sure they have treatment. The one thing I would say too for parents, if you're working through a list of folks and you're looking for a therapist for your kid, I would ask in those initial calls how they deal with a suicidal teen and how they deal with self-harm and what all those things look like. And I would get the answers before you make a choice, because I as a teen therapist absolutely understand that at the end of the day, we may end up in a situation that wasn't necessarily predictable. And I certainly wouldn't want to take a teen on that I like couldn't treat. But at the same time, there are things that come up that maybe we're not qualified for. And so if you have the sense of that, like maybe that's something that's going on with your kid, I would definitely want to ask that question, because it would be an interrupting thing in therapy to have to switch therapists if the therapist didn't feel comfortable working through the suicidal thoughts in private practice or in any agency. If you're there, like you want to make sure you have someone who can like understand that, who is knowledgeable about it, who can treat it, and who can help find the most effective things for the family as you go through that process. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about like teen mental health and making sure parents have resources, and that things are kind of like given appropriately. And I'm also really passionate about providers having the appropriate training and support around all of that, because I would hate for someone to feel like they couldn't be helpful without, certain resources. So if you are a provider and you like want more resources, like please feel free to sign up for my free membership, like, follow, subscribe. I'm going to post a lot of content in September around like suicide awareness and understanding. And I really hope that it's helpful and that it resonates at least a little bit. But I could go off on a bunch of different things, but I feel like this is a great start in a podcast for suicide awareness and for self-harm awareness. So as long as you, or if you have any other questions, anything you would like me to like comment on or talk about, I'd be more than happy. Please like, follow, subscribe, leave me comments, let me know if you have additional questions. I'd be more than happy to answer all of them. So, and if you're a parent of a teen and you want to follow my journey, I am happy to give tips and tricks and thoughts on how to just effectively parent and support kids and their mental health. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. I hope everybody learned something. I hope it was a good framework for kind of like talking about suicidality and suicide awareness. And I look forward to like chatting about this more throughout the month of September. So I hope you will join me again. But until then, take care.